If your wife is having an affair, that's my business." Those words didn't just land, they detonated. And when Kody Brown said them in the Season 20 Tell-All, Part 4 trailer, the entire Sister Wives fandom froze. Because suddenly, a 10-year-old wound was ripped wide open again. This isn't nostalgia. This isn't recycled drama. This is the moment everything broke, finally being dragged into the light. The 2015 Catfish scandal. The moment Meri Brown's life imploded. The moment the Brown family stopped being a family and started becoming a battlefield. And this time, Robyn Brown isn't hiding behind soft voices or perfectly timed tears. This time, the receipts are on the table. Let's be brutally honest. When TLC announced they were revisiting the Catfish scandal, longtime viewers didn't roll their eyes, they gasped. Because everyone who's been watching closely knows this truth. The Catfish wasn't just a mistake. It was the crack in the foundation. And everything that followed collapsed because of it. Robyn sat in that tell-all chair and said, with absolute certainty, that she did nothing wrong. That she had Meri's back the entire time. That statement alone stopped people cold. Because Meri has been quietly telling a very different story for years. 2 women. 1 scandal. 2 completely opposite versions of the truth. And only one of them can be real. According to insiders, filming this tell-all was electric. Thick with resentment that never healed. One source said the tension was so intense you could feel 10 years of anger hanging in the air. Another said Robyn seemed genuinely shocked that anyone would even question her version of events. And that reaction tells you everything. When you control a narrative long enough, you forget other people were there when it happened. For years, viewers were told a simple story. Meri was lonely. She was catfished. She made a mistake. The family rallied around her. But here's the question that never went away, and the one this tell-all finally forces us to ask. What did Robyn do with the information she had? Because everyone agrees Meri was catfished. That's not the debate. The real debate is whether someone inside the family used that vulnerability as leverage. To understand this, you have to go back. In 2014, Meri Brown lost everything that made her secure. After more than 2 decades as Kody's legal wife, she divorced him. Not because she wanted to, but so Robyn could legally marry him and adopt her children. It was framed as selfless, as sisterhood, as love. But in reality, Meri signed away the only protection she had in a family that already treated her like an afterthought. And right after that, when she was isolated, invisible, and emotionally abandoned, the catfish appeared. A man named Sam Cooper. Flowers, texts, music, attention. Except Sam wasn't real. It was Jackie Overton, a predator who saw Meri for what she was at that moment. Isolated, insecure, and desperate to feel chosen by someone. People close to the situation say Meri was emotionally shattered. One insider said she felt invisible in her own home. Another said Cody had already checked out long before the scandal gave him an excuse. Meri wasn't seeking betrayal. She was seeking validation. But here's where this stops being a simple catfish story. Because while a stranger was manipulating Meri online, someone inside her own family was watching it happen. Robyn admitted it herself. She said she was watching Meri's online conversations unfold. Think about that. She wasn't vaguely aware. She wasn't suspicious from a distance. She was actively monitoring Meri's private vulnerability. So the question becomes unavoidable. Why surveillance instead of support? Robyn says she went straight to Cody. That she told him to go deal with it. That Meri was being taken advantage of. On paper, that sounds reasonable. But ask yourself honestly, if your goal is to protect someone, do you run to the husband she already feels abandoned by? Or do you go to her directly? Robyn claims she eventually confronted Meri. Asked her directly what was going on. But people who were there described something very different. They say it felt less like concern, and more like interrogation. Less like sisterhood, and more like intelligence gathering. And timing matters. This happened right after Meri gave up her legal wife status so Robyn could have it. The divorce papers were barely dry. Suddenly, Robyn was the confidant, and the informant. If that isn't a conflict of interest, what is? Meri has never backed down from her version of events. She has said clearly that Robyn's involvement made everything worse. That every vulnerable conversation became ammunition. That every confession became evidence used against her. She believed Robyn was her safe place. Instead, she says, her pain was reported, recorded, and weaponized. Meri was humiliated publicly, forced to deny an affair, forced to explain herself over and over, while being treated like the villain instead of the victim. And here's the devastating part. The catfish didn't just damage Meri's reputation. It erased her. After that, Cody never really came back. And slowly, that same pattern spread to Christine, then Yanel. Cody now treats the catfish like a permanent justification, a moral weapon, a get-out-of-husband duties card. In his mind, Meri's pain doesn't matter, only the betrayal he believes happened. And Robyn stands beside him, reinforcing that story perfectly. She's the loyal wife, the honest one, the trustworthy one. And somehow, every major family collapse ends with Robyn closer to Cody, and everyone else pushed out. Christine leaves. Yanel leaves. Meri finally walks away. Same pattern. Same outcome. Then comes the moment that made viewers furious. Host Suki asks Robyn the question no one dared ask for 10 years. Do you think Meri has any reason to distrust you? Robyn doesn't hesitate. No, absolutely not. No reflection. No empathy. No acknowledgement of impact. Then she delivers her favorite shield, I know my intentions. And there it is. Intentions over impact. Self-declared innocence. Total denial. But intentions don't erase outcomes. And the outcome of Robyn's involvement was catastrophic. Meri lost her marriage, her position, her trust, her voice. And Robyn gained everything. Fans have noticed the pattern. They always do. Robyn inserts herself into every crisis, becomes indispensable, controls the flow of information, emerges as the hero or the victim every time. So here's the question this tell-all finally forces us to confront. Was Robyn a concerned sister wife trying to help, or a strategic operator who saw an opportunity and took it? Because the facts are clear. She watched. She reported. She confronted. And Meri was destroyed. After 10 years, the truth is no longer buried. The catfish scandal wasn't the end of the Brown family. It was the beginning of the end. So now it's on you. Do you believe Robyn when she says she did nothing wrong? Or do you believe Meri, the woman who lived with the consequences? Drop your theory in the comments. Team Robyn or Team Meri? Because after a decade of lies, silence, and carefully controlled narratives, this reckoning was always coming. And finally, it's here. Those words didn't just shock viewers. They exposed a truth this family has been hiding for nearly 10 years. Because the moment Kody Brown said that in the Season 20 tell-all trailer, the sister wives story stopped being about plural marriage and started being about control, blame, and a reckoning that was always coming. This isn't old drama being recycled. This is the exact moment the Brown family fell apart, finally being dragged back into the spotlight. The 2015 catfish scandal wasn't a side story. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was the fracture that split this family beyond repair. And now, for the first time, the people involved are being forced to sit in the same room and confront what really happened. Robyn Brown says she did nothing wrong. She says she protected Meri. She says she had her back. But Meri has been quietly telling a very different story. One filled with betrayal, surveillance, and a level of manipulation that viewers are only now beginning to understand. 2 women, 1 scandal, and 2 versions of the truth that cannot both be real. Sources close to production say this tell-all was tense from the moment cameras rolled. Not emotional, not reflective, but sharp, defensive, explosive. One insider described it as 10 years of resentment finally boiling over. Another said Robyn appeared genuinely stunned that anyone would dare question her role in the scandal. And that reaction matters. Because when someone has controlled the narrative for long enough, they forget that witnesses exist. For years, the public story was simple. Meri was lonely. She got catfished. She made a mistake. But that story ignores one uncomfortable question, the one this tell-all finally forces us to ask. What was happening behind the scenes? And who was really benefiting from Meri's collapse? To understand that, You have to go back to the moment Meri lost everything that made her secure, and why her vulnerability became someone else's opportunity. And that's where this story really begins. To understand why the Catfish scandal destroyed everything, you have to understand what Meri Brown lost before it ever happened. In 2014, Meri wasn't just struggling emotionally, she was being erased in real time. After more than 20 years as Kody Brown's legal wife, she agreed to divorce him so Robyn could legally marry him and adopt her children. On camera, it was framed as a loving sacrifice, a selfless act for the good of the family. But off camera, it stripped Meri of the only security she had in a marriage system that already gave her very little. She wasn't the legal wife anymore. She wasn't the favorite. And slowly, she wasn't even being treated like a wife at all. People close to the family say Meri felt completely invisible. One insider described her as emotionally abandoned long before the Catfish ever entered the picture. Another said Cody had already checked out. The scandal just gave him permission to never check back in. That's the emotional landscape where the Catfish appears. Not in a happy home. Not in a stable marriage. But in isolation. The messages started small. Compliments. Attention. Music. Someone listening. Someone choosing her, even if it was only through a screen. But Sam Cooper wasn't real. It was Jackie Overton, a predator who targeted Meri at her weakest point. Someone who saw a woman who felt replaced, unwanted, and desperate to matter to someone again. And Meri fell for it. Not because she was reckless, but because she was vulnerable. Here's where this story takes a darker turn. Because while Meri was being manipulated by a stranger online, she wasn't alone. Robyn Brown later admitted that she was watching it all unfold. Not hearing about it later. Not finding out after the damage was done. She said she was actively aware of Meri's online conversations as they were happening. Let that sink in. While Meri was emotionally spiraling, believing she had found someone who finally saw her, someone inside her own family was observing it in real time. And instead of going directly to Meri with empathy and support, Robyn says her first move was to go to Cody. Think about that choice. If your goal is to protect someone who feels emotionally abandoned by her husband, do you really start by reporting her to him? Robyn claims she was trying to help. That she told Cody to step in and fix things. That she was looking out for Meri. But sources close to the situation say Robyn's involvement didn't feel like protection, it felt like monitoring. One insider described her behavior as less "Are you okay?" and more "What exactly is happening?" Another said Robyn seemed focused on collecting information, not comforting someone in distress. And timing matters. This all happened right after Meri gave up her legal marriage so Robyn could have it. Suddenly, Robyn was the legal wife. The trusted wife. The one with direct access to Cody. And Meri, the woman who made that possible, was now under scrutiny. Robyn says she eventually confronted Meri directly. Asked her what was going on. Why she was talking to this person. But Meri remembers it differently. She has said that Robyn's involvement made everything worse. That every private conversation felt like it was being passed along. That the person she trusted became the person reporting her. And once that trust was gone, the damage was irreversible. Because from that moment on, the Catfish stopped being a private crisis and became a weapon. A justification. A permanent stain. Cody stopped seeing Meri as a struggling wife and started treating her like a betrayer. And Robyn stood beside him, reinforcing that version of events. The question that refuses to go away is simple and devastating. Was Robyn actually trying to save Meri? Or was she positioning herself as the only wife Cody could trust? Because after the Catfish, everything changed. And not by accident. In part 3, we're going to look at how Meri says this betrayal actually felt, and why she believes the Catfish didn't just end her marriage, it ended her place in the family forever. For Meri Brown, the Catfish scandal wasn't just humiliating, it was isolating in a way that changed her forever. She wasn't just dealing with public embarrassment. She was watching the people she trusted most quietly turn into witnesses, and then into judges. Meri has said repeatedly that what hurt the most wasn't the online deception. It was what happened after. The way her pain was handled. The way her vulnerability was used. She believed Robyn was her safe place. Someone she could speak to without fear. Someone who understood what it meant to feel replaced in your own marriage. But according to Meri, every private conversation became public property. Every admission became another reason to doubt her. Another reason to distance themselves from her. Instead of compassion, she felt scrutiny. Instead of protection, she felt exposure. And the worst part? She couldn't prove it. Because how do you explain that the person claiming to support you is actually reporting your pain to the man who already stopped choosing you? Meri was forced to make humiliating public statements. She had to repeatedly clarify that she never met this person, that there was no physical affair, that she regretted being drawn into something that spiraled out of her control. Imagine that, being manipulated by a predator, and then being treated like the villain. People close to Meri say she felt completely blindsided by the family's response. One source said she truly believed Robyn was the only person on her side, until it became clear that nothing she said stayed private. Another insider described Meri as emotionally shut down after that. Like someone who realized too late that trusting the wrong person had cost her everything. From that moment on, Meri wasn't just a wife with problems. She became a liability. Cody's behavior shifted permanently. He stopped trying, stopped engaging, stopped seeing her as someone worth emotional effort. And Robyn stood beside him, reinforcing the narrative. Meri couldn't be trusted. Meri had crossed a line. Meri brought this on herself. That framing did something devastating. It didn't just end Meri's marriage, it erased her credibility. Every concern she raised after that was dismissed. Every emotion she expressed was questioned. Every attempt to reconnect was filtered through the lens of the catfish. And that's when fans started noticing something disturbing. The catfish scandal didn't just damage Meri, it elevated Robyn. She became the loyal wife, the vigilant one, the partner who saw it coming. And while Meri was being quietly pushed out, Robyn's position in the family only grew stronger. This wasn't happening in isolation. Viewers watched a pattern form. Whenever conflict surfaced, Robyn was there, advising, mediating, translating, always close to Cody, always involved, always emerging as the reasonable one. And slowly, the power balance shifted. Meri wasn't just sidelined, she was neutralized. The family didn't need to argue with her anymore. They didn't need to repair the relationship. The catfish had become a permanent excuse to stop trying. And once that door closed for Meri, it never reopened. In hindsight, it's impossible to ignore how perfectly the pieces fell into place. Robyn gained legal status. Robyn gained trust. Robyn gained influence. And Meri lost everything. So the question viewers are now asking isn't whether Meri made mistakes. It's whether those mistakes were used strategically. Because from that moment forward, the family hierarchy was clear. There were wives, and then there was Robyn. And once that hierarchy was set, the collapse of the rest of the family became inevitable. In part 4, we'll look at how Cody and Robyn locked arms to weaponize the catfish scandal, and how that decision didn't just end one marriage, it destroyed them all. By the time the catfish scandal became public, the damage wasn't just done, it was being used. Kody Brown didn't treat what happened as a tragedy. He treated it as a verdict. From that moment on, the story was no longer about a woman being emotionally manipulated during her weakest point. It became about betrayal, about loyalty, about punishment. And Cody made one thing clear, loudly and aggressively. If an affair happened, it was his business. And in his mind, the case was already closed. There was no room for nuance, no space for context. No acknowledgement that Meri had been emotionally abandoned long before any online messages existed. To Cody, the catfish became a moral weapon, a permanent excuse to withdraw, a justification for years of coldness, a shield against accountability. And standing firmly beside him was Robyn. Together, they presented a united narrative, one that served them perfectly. Meri couldn't be trusted. Robyn tried to help. Cody was the injured party. That story repeated itself year after year, until it became fact, at least inside the family. But here's what makes this so important. Once the catfish was weaponized against Meri, it didn't stop with her. It set a precedent. It taught Cody that emotional withdrawal had no consequences. That he could disengage, punish, and isolate, and call it justified. And Robyn reinforced it every step of the way. Sources close to the family say Cody genuinely believes Robyn saved him. That she protected him from being hurt again. That she was the only wife he could trust. And that belief explains everything. Because after Meri, the same emotional pattern spread. Christine began speaking openly about feeling unwanted, ignored, unloved. Yanel eventually admitted the marriage had become transactional, empty. And what happened? They left. One by one. And each time, Robyn remained. Fans noticed it. Critics noticed it. Even casual viewers couldn't ignore the pattern anymore. Every major family collapse ended the same way, with Robyn closer to Cody than ever, and everyone else pushed out. Then came the moment that made viewers furious. During the tell-all, host Suki asked Robyn the question that should have been asked years earlier. Do you believe Meri has any reason to distrust you? Robyn didn't hesitate. No, absolutely not. No pause. No empathy. No recognition of harm. Then came the line that set the internet on fire. I know my intentions. And in that moment, everything clicked. Because Robyn wasn't talking about impact. She wasn't talking about outcomes. She was talking about her feelings. And that's not accountability. That's self-absolution. Intentions don't erase consequences. And the consequences of Robyn's involvement were devastating. Meri lost her marriage, her voice, her place in the family. Christine and Yanel watched the same dynamic play out, and eventually walked away rather than accept a system where only one wife mattered. The Catfish scandal didn't just expose Meri's vulnerability. It exposed the hierarchy. Different rules, different forgiveness, different value. And Robyn sat at the top of it. That's why this 10-year-old scandal still matters. Because it wasn't an isolated mistake. It was the blueprint. It showed exactly how this family would deal with pain, power, and loyalty, and why it was always going to end the way it did. So now, the final question belongs to you.